Let's do one more. 1, 2, 3. Crispy. Is that the new tagline?
I guess so.
We're back. Organized Sound Podcast. We don't number these episodes, but this would be about episode 5 or 6. I'm joined by my co-host, Sean Grady, and I am Mahib. I was going to say YB. I was like, it was in my mind because we were talking about
Not anymore.
Alright, so this episode we are going to discuss our predictions for the XXL Freshmen list. And we're challenging you out in the interwebs. If you think you have the list that is right, or if you have the list in your mind and you think your list is way more accurate than ours, post it in the comments. And if you beat us both with a score of 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, we will give you a shout out. So get your comments in. And so Sean, how you feel about XXL in general this year?
I feel like they have a multitude of artists they can choose from. I feel like it was a strong year in 2016 for a lot of people who couldn't make it in past years due to, not as much activity, not putting out as much work. So I feel like a lot of people were upset with the previous 2 years' picks, but I feel like this year has some strong candidates and some good talent overall.
Interesting. I think this year has a weird gap. There's some people who are just so big, and then when you get to 5, 6, 7, 8 pick, I feel like it's really where they're gonna get to show themselves in terms of their bias, because it gets really fuzzy and close really fast for this list. So
easily.
I'm just really excited. I need to count my list to make sure it's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I have to cut somebody, but it's gonna be really easy. Oh man,
It's never easy.
You threw me off. I'll discuss who I swapped out. So let's get right into it. Present to me your prediction list for XXL Freshman 2017.
Okay, so the top 5, I'm pretty confident will be on the list, or at least I hope. So Joey Purp, No Name, formerly known as Name Gypsy, Playboi Carti, D.R.A.M, Big Baby D.R.A.M, Ugly God. Those are the top 5.
Okay, so you're strong on those.
Right.
And now, okay, yeah. So you're kind of setting yourself up to say you're also not too sure about the bottom 5, right?
Yeah, because that's when it gets a little hairy, just because I could see a bunch of people filling those random spots, and it's like we were talking about, it's all about who strikes while the iron's hot.
The iron's been hot for people in the last month.
Right.
That I was like, ugh.
And XXL, and people were upset that Denzel Curry didn't make the list until last year. So it really just depends on if the artist is able to generate a fan base and how loyal that fan base is. And that's why Carti's top, because Carti has already established a cult following, and that's that's recognized in the rap scene. Even if you're not a Carti fan strictly, you've probably heard his name or seen him on a feature. Even if you haven't listened to the song, you know who he is, and he's on the come up.
Definitely, and there's all types of ways people can kind of market their music, right? They can have a nice Snapchat placement. I was talking about this in the last podcast, is people are getting music from all different places. So first of all, you need an aggregator, right? And I never realized the SoundCloud numbers. People have 10 million plus, the little Uzi Verts and stuff like that. They have 10 million listens on their SoundCloud. And for me, when I think of the internet, I was almost exclusively thinking, well, the YouTube numbers are realistically exactly what the streaming numbers are. But no, it's an aggregation. And then you have Spotify has huge amounts of plays, and Apple Music now is a major player in the scene. And so if you have one big song, you have to go make a tally for 4, 5, 6, 7 different places to kind of get your average number of how many people actually listen to this song. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you mentioned SoundCloud rappers, because ever since the emergence of Yachty and Uzi Vert, I feel like it's in in rap, in the game itself, people have used SoundCloud rappers to kind of throw shade at other people they feel like maybe less qualified to actually be a consistent contributing rapper. But it's definitely a platform on which people can, you know, generate that fan base that I mentioned that can really propel you to be on a list like this. And, you know, we're seeing with this new news school, people use all this new type of technology and social media as a way of gaining fans. You know, if it had been for, who was it, Kylie Jenner playing Nabs, Myself, you know,
perhaps
he probably
wouldn't
that
record would be.
Have blown up. Absolutely.
PNB Rock had the similar thing. Kylie Jenner posted the Selfish song.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, it's also like one of those things where you open yourself to that, and then how easily could he have jumped into that kind of like Tiger-like beef? Right. And that's a whole nother strategy with like 21 Savage. I was reading like On the Road with Fader article, and they talked about how that comment that 21 Savage made kind of made the shows a lot more hard. Like people were just like a lot more interested in having that headline was very beneficial to the moment and the hype.
What was this comment he made him?
Something to the effect of like, oh, Kylie Jenner would tear that up, and and then obviously they're like, oh, what about Tiger? And then he's like, he wouldn't care. But then on the way back into the tour bus, he was like, no, I like the relationship.
Oh, okay. Trying to.
But then he was also like
right.
poking on Instagram.
Yeah, that's just who he is. That's his personality. He's over the top. He's outspoken. You know, that's what people like about him. So.
That's exactly.
Absolutely, but even when you look into, if you go on Nav's Spotify page, if you click the About tab, you know, one of the first things it mentions is how he was played on Kylie Jenner's Snapchat.
Nuh-uh.
So you know, it's kind of like, you know, this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Does she get paid for that?
I
feel like there's so many bags coming forward at this point. She would just rather keep her integrity as like somebody who can find new music and bring it to people.
Right, because I'm not sure how she's discovering all these artists. Like, there's got to be something behind the scenes that we're not seeing.
She's got a secret pipeline.
Yeah.
So let's get to your bottom five.
Okay, so the bottom five, less sure about. As I said, I don't want to call these artists interchangeable, but you know, or easily replaceable. But
it's
you know,
close.
It's
it's a boxing match at this point.
Absolutely. So 6 through 10, we have PNB Rock, Grizzly, Mask Slump God, Nav, and Famous Dex.
I love it. I think Famous Dex is the strongest shoo-in of your bottom five, because I feel like him and Ugly God's swag is comparable in that Famous Dex is straight up just more popular. Mm-hmm. And I think XXL wants to round these lists out, right? So they're going to pick a couple spots where they feel like they shaded somebody from last year or didn't give them the proper due. They're going to pick a couple spots of just like different geographical locations.
Oh, right.
So that it's not all New York artists. Yeah. Even though it could probably just be New York artists.
Right,
this year.
Absolutely.
New York is as strong as, you know, Atlanta's been in the past and Chicago's been in the past. And I think they're going to also do that feel-good pick of, oh, we picked someone with a really big song that we couldn't deny, and then we picked somebody with a really big, not mixtape, I forget what I was going to say, but, you know, picking somebody that has, like, just the bars, like, that everyone says that they're looking for, and kind of brings that weight and that righteous pick.
Yeah, they definitely try to mix it up. If you look at their ciphers from last year and just the freshmen who made it to last year's list, they had, you know, it just in the first cipher they had Lil Dicky, Anderson .Paak, and Designer. Stylistically,
and
very
that was
scattered.
Interesting to chunk it out too, and like they also put like Kodak, Lil Yachty, and Lil Uzi Vert together.
Right, and that was interesting too because Denzel Curry, if you know, to more probably underground rap fans, they probably knew who Denzel Curry was before, and so he was a potential snub for the 2015 list. A lot of people thought that year's list was weaker as well, and they included him in it. And then Lil Yachty, you know, he had the one night. He's probably last year's version of Ugly God, maybe a little less accomplished just because there's not as much work out, but you know, he definitely fills that role in that he's capitalizing off of this one song. You know, he's getting mass exposure. You know, it's been on the top 10 in Spotify rap playlist for probably the past 6 months, so he's blowing up.
Yeah, I'd have to totally agree. So let me see if I have any other comments about your list. Yeah, I think that's a very, very strong list. Can you talk about a couple people that you thought were going to be on there, or that you were thinking when we filmed the prediction episode that you've now bumped out, and why?
Yeah, like we were saying before we got rolling, Rich the Kid. You mentioned you didn't even see him on the list to vote for the 10th spot.
Right, he's. Let me check if he's on my list. He's not on my list, but I actually would make him. Oh no, he is on my list. But he wasn't somebody you could vote for on the website, and I don't know if DJ Academics mentioned something about him tweeting about not being recognized for this year and being mad about it. But then there's also the thought that he might be in already, guaranteed, kind of one of those picks of, oh, sorry, we didn't do it last year, all right, you're in automatically, we're not even going to put this to a vote.
For you.
You have a spot saved for you, and I think he's, in terms of consistency, he's that artist that is very hard to deny. He's always putting mixtapes out, he's always putting...
more notably too, how I got to listen to him, he had a few songs that were played in Donald Glover's Atlanta, so... And at the perfect moment, just to, you know, obviously give you a bit of insight as to what the Atlanta rap scene looks like and what's hot out there. So that was interesting just because I'm not from there. I don't know much about the culture, but that's how I initially got into him.
Well, yeah, he's probably at his strongest in Atlanta. He's technically... Well, no, he is an Atlanta-based artist. That's where he got his buzz, and he has his childhood in New York, but... Yeah, I'd imagine that's where his records are hitting the hardest because that's kind of the style of rap that he's using. Okay, I really like that list. And now, what are we gonna do for the person who's more right? Let's think of like a punishment that you can do on camera for being the winner or the loser, and I'll let you decide.
On the spot.
On the spot.
I have to come up with
All right,
this
so
punishment.
look, I'm gonna go into my 10. And then we'll do that.
Sure.
Alright, so top to bottom, I have Famous Dex, Playboi Carti, PNB Rock, Joyner Lucas from Massachusetts. Shout out Massachusetts. We are a Massachusetts/New York based podcast. Kyle, Young M.A., well, Kyle being super duper Kyle, Young M.A., MadeinTYO. Rich the Kid, a Boogie with the Hoodie, and Xxtentation. Now, I think you can comment on my list.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd probably put, if I were to, redo my bottom 5, I'd replace Joyner Lucas with Cousin Stiz, just because I feel like I've seen his name a lot. Not really a huge fan, admittedly, unfortunately. From Massachusetts, I should probably listen to him more.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I've seen some noisy specials on him. Definitely respect the grind. Gotta appreciate good music in Boston. And I just feel like it's hard if you're coming from Boston specifically because a few years ago I was talking about Michael Christmas. And he was on the verge of this massive rise. Yeah, but I with him I feel like he's been extra quiet and. Unfortunately, if you're quiet for too long, unless you're Playboi Carti, it's going to affect you adversely.
Asterisk.
Yeah, right. And you need to have that kind of cult following in order to, if you want to be quiet for a little bit, because then people if Frank didn't have that following, Frank Ocean, then no one would have cared about his absence. But just with the type of artist he is and the work he puts in and the type of music he produces, it's definitely gonna warrant a fan base.
Okay, and I think it's stream of availability too. People are really good now at making their lives mysterious, and then any little shred of media that people can get about them is so valuable versus the people that are always available and just tweeting every day on Snapchat every day. It makes you feel like, okay, I'm bored of you and you haven't put out music in a while.
Right. Absolutely. You have some interesting choices on your list, and
I want the first comparison I want to do is Slump God versus Xxxtentation because they are friends themselves, Florida artists, and so clearly you think one is bigger and I think the other is bigger. So talk about that juxtaposition.
So it's worth noting, you know, they have criminal backgrounds and they met in prison.
Yeah.
Just to give you some context as to how their relationship got started, but basically I didn't put X on here just because of his egregious charges, and you know, even it's not like I completely dismiss his music or his personality because I think he's infectious in both regards. It's just unfortunate that it coincides with a time in his life when he's just so hostile, and I could have a whole separate episode about this and what this says about rap fans and if we should give attention to him or not. But basically I put Ski Mask on here because I didn't even know, do you know who Keith Ape is? Keith Ape is a Korean artist.
I do.
Yeah.
I know him from the Noise special.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was going to watch that yesterday just to get some more information as to who he was, but they collaborated and that's how I really first heard Ski Mask Slump God.
Dope.
And he's someone who fits into my definition of someone who's getting hot at the right time, who's gotten that exposure, probably in part to XXX. But, you know, I put him on here instead of X just because I feel more comfortable if he were to, you know, be put in a sort of, not that X isn't in a national spotlight, but I'd rather the Slump God kind of get this publicity more than X because I just feel like X is a really polarizing figure. It's difficult to support him, at least from my standpoint, you know. I feel like X is popular with, you know, teenagers to young adult age, but I feel like the older you get, the more you realize that some of these charges and allegations can't necessarily save a music career, and especially based off such few songs.
And we've seen people sit in jail, like Bobby Schmurder and stuff like that.
Right.
So, you know, the labels don't always have the power to bail people out, or choose to, or elect to.
Let's talk about Kyle.
I want to talk about Kyle. My take on the XXXTentacion is that he once again benefits from the big headline, right? And it's a really interesting situation. He felt like Drake was gonna reach out and give him the bump that Drake has very classically and generously given out to a lot of other new artists like Migos, like Fetty Wap, and you know, jumping on the song that's already hot and being the feature. Or in this case, it really seemed like KMT had a verse open for XXXTentacion. And he was in jail, so Drake decided just not to call him, even though he might have hit somebody up to potentially get in contact with him. And what XXXTentacion did, for better or worse, was say, Drake, you're not going to give me the shine off of your name. I'm going to literally just take it and provoke you and this and that. And I think that is why, on like a bigger level of music journalism, he's on a lot more people's minds. I think a lot of the things he did and said, especially regarding like Drake's mom, were a little way over the line, and they speak to his immaturity, which you brought up as well. But I think that, coupled with the fact that "Look at Me Now" is the biggest song between the two of them, I think that's going to be why he's the freshman and Slump God isn't. Of course, I think they actually do have a chance to both be on the list, but again, with that idea of like they like to spread it out, I think they might only pick X this year and then go with Slump God next year.
And it's like we were talking about once again before we got rolling, these reaction videos are becoming increasingly popular.
Reaction videos. Yeah. And now I talked about hating them and just thinking they're annoying, but at the same time I realized that they've kind of filled the void of Vine. And I see like Instagram and like the video features on Instagram and some of the new things they implemented with the story, I see things filling the void of Vine, where Vine is like where you could get a song to go viral for a very stupid reason. Denzel Curry Ultimatum is a good example of that, and French Montana Do you know what song I'm talking about?
I don't.
There's so many Vine videos for this French Montana song. It's pretty big. Ain't worried about nothing. Ain't worried about nothing. Yeah. So you want to talk about Kyle? Kyle, I have to testify. I bought a ticket to a show at Webster Hall in New York, and I thought it was on a Sunday, and it was on a Friday, and I double checked on Saturday.
You thought Kyle was a Sunday artist.
I missed out on him and Stiz, but I think that changed my perceptions because Kyle did a lot of cool things, like go do an interview with Hot 97, which I think is very important, as well as going to do an interview with Gary V. And I don't know, anytime a rapper and Gary V link up, I say like, okay, this rapper is extremely intelligent about how to market music in the modern age. So, yeah, how do you feel about Kyle?
Kyle's interesting, you know.
I think he's very interesting. Oh, I hate to cut you off.
It's okay, go ahead.
The point he made in his freshman pitch, which I think the freshman pitches are mostly laughable and stupid,
yeah.
And no one goes there prepared to say anything all too interesting. Kyle said, I'm like a real dude. I don't walk through the rap filter of like, this is what I should be like. Because I'm a rapper, I'm just myself. And I think that wave is coming in very heavy right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's probably why, you know, Ebro for Hot 97 admittedly doesn't like Kyle and is very vocal about that, unfortunately.
I watched that.
And I think he feels as if Kyle is a gimmick because, you know, it's this dude who's, you know, crooked smile, crooked tooth in his smile is kind of his, you know, how people see him, and it's kind of his staple and what separates him from other artists. And he's someone who I thought might have made last year just because when he came out with Smile in 2015, he had some songs on there. You know, he was on the Surf Project in the summer of 2015. Just like frequent collaborations with Chance the Rapper, I thought would propel him to be, you know, I thought that would propel him to freshman status. It's sort of like the case of Alex Wiley, where you're around all this talent and, you know, you collab with all these people like Vic Mensa and Chance and people from Chicago, but it doesn't really translate into, you know, mainstream success. But Kyle's trueness to himself and, you know, just there's a lot of things about him that might be off-putting for some people. He has kind of a nasally voice. You know, he laughs a lot. He doesn't take many things seriously. He's just himself. He takes everything in stride. These are things that can turn people away from you, but it can resonate with someone who's a true rap fan and someone who's okay with who they are. And they see that in Kyle because they see that in themselves. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not XXL validates him.
And I think all that, coupled with the fact that he has a Billboard, like, top 40 song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's
a very strong late-game contender.
Absolutely. Because
the record has to be there.
Right, stemming back the last few years, I think this is all going to culminate on, you know, a sort of proper debut album. Maybe that Smile wasn't, but with I Spy and Doubt It and other singles like that, I feel like he'll release on the same track list and hopefully that will give him enough exposure. But yeah, obviously if you do a song with Lil Yachty, have his co-sign, that music video, that's a little bit quirky, you're going to gain some fans and, you know, people are going to be hearing about you more. And it's a good song, admittedly.
Definitely.
Even though Ebro doesn't think so. But when it comes to street reactions, when I was talking about XXX, I forgot where they were in some inner city and they were just playing Look at Me to random passerby. And, you know, even the people who couldn't name Lil Uzi Vert by name, still, it could tell that, you know, it was unoriginal, the song, and that, you know, there's Uzi influence, you know, just basically busting out
Oozing out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Good way to put it. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not, you know, because I feel like XXL doesn't want, you know, the backlash from the public because I feel like they've gotten that the past few years, just like, you know, some artists that people aren't okay with and things like that, and they're not sure why they're on there. But talk about Young M.A. a little bit because this is interesting.
Right. Well, I think Young M.A. and MadeinTYO would fall under that category of people who kind of could have deserved it last year, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of New York artists on my list in particular because I currently live in Brooklyn, and that is what hits. Like, when I put like an A Boogie and a PNB Rock on the list, it's because I've seen them multiple times without ever buying a ticket to their show, and that speaks to the level of which they're willing to network in the streets and be at other people's shows and really putting in the effort to, get their name out there. And Young M.A. is somebody who's just very present in the New York scene. I see people watching her videos and just on the subway. And I always talk about in New York, like, there's records that you can't hide from in the street. And you kind of experienced that when you came to visit me. Like, people have music playing out of their car. They're playing Casanova, they're playing Cardi B, they're playing Young M.A. And I think she just has definitely merited being on the list. She has the big song. And I actually heard she did really well in the voting for last year's top 10th spot. And so that makes me think that she's been completely ingratiated in that circle of hip-hop appreciators that is XXL. And then the other person I want to talk about is Joyner. Joyner's kind of comes off as a heart pick because he's Massachusetts, but I really think he has the bars. I think he has a lot of connections in New York in particular, and that this is kind of the guy people want to succeed, and so they're gonna pick this guy as the I called it pick because he's very lyrical, but what he brings to it is a lot of fun, and I think that's what's needed in the rap game.
Oh, absolutely.
Kind of like not the sound of, but the aura of an Eminem or a Ludacris or somebody like that.
Right, someone who can make you laugh, but also like undeniably has talent and
exactly.
Just raw spitting ability.
And that definition is exactly what was captured in his ultrasound video, which just released, and now he's kind of planning an album right around this XXL Freshman list time period. And so I think a lot of these artists are tailoring their rollouts to XXL so that they can kind of double benefit here, and I think it's working in a lot of cases. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Is there anyone else you wanted to talk about, like one last final comment?
And just reverting back to Young M.A., it's interesting to see, we talk about artists who are successful right now but don't have that one big song. They don't have the White Iverson numbers, and right, and so with Young M.A. it'll be interesting to see whether or not will kind of capitalize in some, a spot on the list. But it's what you said, it's all about who's playing it and where they're playing it and the type of fans you have. But even if you're walking down the street in the streets of Brooklyn, you hear someone play Young M.A. out of their car, that's just another way. That's another way to gain exposure, get your name out there. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not she makes the list. I'm advocating for No Name Gypsy because I feel like she's been around for a while, and she just had a Tiny Desk concert on NPR, which is only offered to a handful of artists who NPR deems, through All Songs Considered, which they deem to be worth it. And people like Anderson .Paak, Big Baby, D.R.A.M were on there recently, so they tip their cap to certain artists who they feel like will become decorated later in their career. And I'm hoping that's the case with her. It'd be cool to see both No Name and Young M.A. on this list because yeah, and it's it's obviously rap's very male oriented and sometimes too much, and I think especially coming off a difficult past few months of domestic abuse allegations for multiple rappers, it'd be nice to see some women who truly deserve it, and not to be like ultra feminist, but it'd be cool to see their hard work recognized, because they grind, it's not like they weren't up all night writing songs or worried about.
And they compete very well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
People are it's a time where people are willing to accept females, and pretty much everyone is the grander point I'm getting to. Rap is for everyone, and I talked about this in one of the previous podcasts. I feel like the word rapper is more of a lifestyle word now. It's not kind of targeting a specific type of person, because it used to be, you know, saggy jeans and XXL t-shirts and like a black guy with a bandana, and now a rapper just means someone who has found success when the odds were slim. And so I think women fall under that category, and all these different leftist artists that you see coming out who have a very weird style but have been embraced with that cult following you mentioned. And I think that's only going to continue. So instead of building these walls and saying people aren't allowed into hip-hop and these people don't qualify because of their technical skills and stuff like that, I think that is such a dated opinion.
That's why I feel as if
the doors are open for everyone. Anyone can be a rapper.
Yeah, and then that's why I feel as if No Name and Young M.A should potentially both be on the list, because they have to combat rap's, you know, constant misogyny, and they have to carve out, you know, their own lanes and, you know, establish their own sounds and personalities in a way that's transmittable to an audience and have it resonate with them. So that's a pretty enormous task, and especially in today's day and age when, you know, when a lot of rap, you know, belittles women to where it gets fans to think about them in a different light. But, you know, hopefully we're starting to see a turn of the tide in regards to that. But, you know, a lot of good artists out there, definitely. So even just to see one of them on the list, I think would be a huge step in the right direction.
I'm very excited for this list in general.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we'll see where they go with it, and we'll dole out punishments accordingly. So another XXL alumni is Joey Badass. Do you remember what year he was?
2013.
2013. We like this guy a lot. He also reps Brooklyn, right? Mm-hmm. And he put out an album recently, All American Badass 3Ks. And I had the chance to listen to this album, and I thought it was excellent. I thought he brought something very timely to the game with very well-crafted records that were true to his sound, but were also really fun, really good songs that have the potential to be very popular. How did you feel about this project, and how much of it did you listen to?
It's worth noting that we had the distinct honor of seeing him alongside Schoolboy Q this past fall.
And A-Boogie. Once again,
right.
seeing A-Boogie without buying a ticket to A-Boogie.
Can't escape him,
in Connecticut.
Might make him a shoe-in for this. We'll see in a few weeks' time. It was a fantastic album. It's funny because when Devastated first came out, it came out in 2016, so everyone kind of didn't know what to think of it. Obviously it was this viral hit, and, you know, probably attracted a lot of fans who weren't originally with Joey, weren't 1999 fans. You know, he got a lot of heat over this single because some people thought he sold out, people didn't understand the record itself, and now that we have the whole context of All American Badass, Devastated makes a lot more sense. And I was a fan of the song originally, but when you listen to it, you know, alongside the rest of the cuts, you know, it just really shows you Joey's state of mind. And I thought it was tremendous because Before the Money, his debut album, I thought was probably one of the best debut albums, you know, not including Illmatic, but he translated from a mixtape artist and kind of like this underground Brooklyn sound into, you know, the Beast Coast, you know, the revival of the East Coast rap scene. And he's definitely at the forefront of that. And I think with this new album, when rappers get overly political, it can, you know, it can lead to good things, or you can shoot yourself in the foot, and you have to be careful, which is why some artists, I feel like Vic Mensa at some points is too political in terms of Black Lives Matter, and you know, obviously he's very passionate about that, and I don't discredit him for any of that, but you just have to be aware that it's going to be a turnoff to some people. But with Joey, I thought it was timely, you know, after turbulent election season, getting out these thoughts and ideas, and in a way, you know, he's coming of age. He just turned 22.
Man.
Yeah, so we've seen this kid grow up from a 17-year-old Brooklyn. You know, he was a junior in high school going into his senior year when he really blew up and 1999 took off. So we're watching him mature, and as a sophomore album, this is definitely a step up, and you know, we get to see his progression as an artist, as a thinker, as a person, and it's good to see everything firing on all cylinders, and you know, he's talking about things that truly matter.
Yeah, name a couple songs that you really like off there, if you can.
Super Predator with Styles P,
oh,
produced by Stax.
Man.
When Joey, some of you might already know this, but when Joey Badass links up with Static Selector, it's always phenomenal.
Desire, yeah.
This is obvious, but Temptation is blown up.
Do you remember the song before Temptation?
Yeah.
Do you want to look it up
I'll
real
look
quick?
it up real quick.
That's I actually like that, For My People.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah, that's
song.
another one that's blown up as well. He starts off the album so well. You know, it's a tight 12-track project, and
very tight.
You know, sometimes that can hurt people, but especially if you don't do enough in the small space you're allotted. But you know, creatively, he definitely opened up new doors for himself as an artist in terms of subject matter, and possibly who would want to collaborate with him because he's touching on these issues,
right,
and
changing perceptions,
and it's
building on perceptions,
and it's all about evolution. As an artist, he's definitely progressed, and normally when we talk about evolution, we look at previous projects and how much an artist has grown from that, and how previous projects might have suffered from certain blemishes that are now corrected. But with Joey, it's interesting because he's just made himself better, and people thought that might be really hard to do to begin with, but he's found ways to constantly improve. Whether it's his vocal performances on this album, absolutely second to none.
Good.
Because he was always someone who could just rapid fire. You watch any freestyle, and he's gonna come out with a heat. But vocally, he's able to elevate himself to another level, kind of like Young Thug, in that he makes his voice, so appealing. He draws you into the song, and he's still able to. He can hold a chorus now, and I feel like that's something that was probably a little bit difficult and before the money, because he'd have to rely on some other people to carry the weight. But because he could always call the hooks, I never worried about his lyrics when it comes to that. But it was a good project for him. It's a difficult subject, but I think it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be talked about right now.
And what's the name of the Schoolboy song?
Oh, Rockabye Baby.
Rockabye Baby is just so hard.
Just Rockabye, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, he kept that under wraps for a while. They were probably working on that when we saw them, honestly.
Right, exactly. That was probably in the tour.
Just to know they were sitting on that, and they're like, we can't play this yet.
Can't put it out.
Oh my god, that must have been really difficult for them. But yeah, Schoolboy is always, a phenomenal feature.
Schoolboy just has a chemistry with certain people.
Schoolboy's a vet, yeah.
He can just make a record.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's always just grimy, but excellent.
Oh, absolutely.
Schoolboy has a talent. Alright, and so speaking of Schoolboy, his label mate Kendrick Lamar, I don't know if you ever heard of him. Probably only the hottest rapper out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Low key. Put out a new album called D.R.A.M. I have not listened to D.R.A.M. I was too caught up in the Playboi Carti mixtape, but it will be on my agenda for when I travel back to New York. So I'm going to let Sean take over and give us some very early reactions to D.R.A.M. from the time that you've sat with it. So talk about how much time that was that you sat with it and what you're gleaming from it.
So Kendrick, I'll start with this. Kendrick's not in my top 5. And my top 5, by that I mean he's not...
Of all time or now?
He's not in my top 5 of who I currently listen to, and this has nothing to do with longevity and where you rank, in terms of the all-time rap greats. But
okay.
I
would also put into that, I like Schoolboy better.
Oh yeah, and I mean I like Isaiah Rashad a little bit better. I think J-Rock's talented. Everyone on that roster, has something new to bring to the table.
Incredible camp.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
the strongest camp, I'd
the
say.
biggest powerhouse in rap, bar none. I don't think anything comes close, honestly.
No.
And that's largely due in part to Kendrick Lamar. On D.R.A.M, it's difficult, as I mentioned to you, to listen to his album once or twice and then give you immediate thoughts as to how you felt about it, because his projects take a lot of time to sit with you. I remember when I first listened to Vimpa Butterfly, I was expecting like Mad City bars. I wanted like fire. I wanted like hold up. I wanted like constantly good, like thought-provoking lines, just like, you know, all in this kind of sequential order. But to Vimpa Butterfly, you know, he was just so, he explored new sounds and they all worked. And I feel like this time, Humble definitely was the right song to release as sort of a hype track.
Yeah.
And just in the way that like Rockabye or Devastated with Joey, I feel like this sits in the album pretty well in the middle of the track listing as this kind of centerpiece. And it's really a testament to who Kendrick Lamar is as a person. He's this silent killer. Like sit down. Like because you know he's not overboast. You know he does his thing. You know he gets his money. He goes on tours and he makes these albums and he's making his impression.
So coming off of a tidal wave like To Pimp a Butterfly, where there's this huge acclaim as this is the best album to come out this year and a very also politically and socially conscious album. Where did that artist take it from here, and what are the themes and the takeaways of this album?
So it follows obviously a protagonist. I feel like all his work is you know, it revolves around, it's all thematic, it's all, you know, all revolves around a story. And, you know, with To Pimp a Butterfly, it was parts of a poem, and then he'd add another line or two of this poem before he'd finish it in the last song. And with this, it kind of starts the story like, so I went for a walk the other day, and those are the last words you hear as he closes out the album. So the whole album kind of goes full circle. And it's interesting because I don't know the name, but he's currently in the midst of some beef with a Fox personality. I don't pay attention to Fox too often, but this person on Fox alleged hip hop as, you know, causing people to, you know, look at black stereotypes and like associate them with black people more frequently than beforehand, and made the argument that hip hop was driving progression backwards essentially. And so he challenges that theory, and it's interesting with Kendrick's work because I feel like it's so timeless, and I feel like it's hard to almost appreciate it right away. I need to see how it grows and, you know, how it fits into the scheme of things this year. But there's a lot of good songs on here, a lot of different sounding type songs. You have DNA, this kind of like, it's in my DNA. It's just this it's almost like anthemic in terms of how humble, you know, it's part of his humility obviously, and how he is as a rapper. But yeah, DNA is just the song that it's so infectious. It's the first actual song on the track listing, and it's just really it starts it off on such a high note. You're really gonna have to listen to that soon, but he ends it with Duckworth. It's his last song, and that's already being hailed as one of the best songs to ever come out. Not even just this year, but just like one of the best last songs on an album in general. So
I'm definitely excited for it, and I think the last album was a little too, well, not too dense, but you know, it was right for the time, but it was the type of album that I listened to twice and didn't go back to, but I could see this album being something I just appreciate way more. And I'm excited for that, and I think he's in a pivotal moment in his career where he is able to claim a top 5 and a top 10 in a lot of people's lists, and I recognize his prowess and his ability to silently kill, as you said. So I'm excited about him as an artist and what he means to so many people. So I think support everything that he does, and he's, you know, J. Cole kind of alluded to the fact that there's not too many role models around, and I think Joey and Kendrick are good examples of sending that back and saying, oh wait, no.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The African American culture is out here, and it's very strong, and it's something that's often considered and undoubtedly moving forward.
it's interesting because last year when Tribe Called Quest dropped their last album, they sort in this generation they sort of hailed Joey, Earl Sweatshirt, and Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole as, you know, they were passing them to the proverbial torch to carry their work in introspective raps. And, you know, we've heard from 3 out of the 4. I've heard Earl Sweatshirt's working on something, so I'm excited to see when that finally rears its head. But, you know, from J. Cole, For Your Eyes Only, to Joey, and to this week with Kendrick, it's like we're getting a lot of tight projects, a lot of conceptual work, for lack of a better term. And I think D.R.A.M in particular will please more core rap fans than To Pimp a Butterfly, because after Good Kid, Mad City, people had this expectation of Kendrick to just come out spitting like absolutely like coming with aggression and just like the hunger and just like raw technical ability that, you know, was unbeknownst before he put the resurgence of California and West Coast rap music back in the spotlight. You know, I could talk all day about the different tracks I like off of D.R.A.M, but you know, it all kind of...
Name 2.
Element.
Okay.
Element, as I said, DNA, Feel, yeah.
It's
honestly,
good.
Duckworth,
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
it's
it's a tough album to digest because you can't really listen to Kendrick like you would listen to some mainstream rappers, some SoundCloud rappers, some mumble rappers. It's definitely not like you can listen to Migos in the car. I tried listening to Kendrick in the car yesterday. I got through most of it, but I had to really sit down with it a second time. Headphone music.
I miss having a car.
Yeah, absolutely.
For that reason.
Right, and yeah, these are works you really need to sit down and like let the words kind of flow over you, and then, you know, take a minute to internalize them and see where they resonate with you. And, you know, it's awesome to have someone like Kendrick Lamar in the game, someone who's already decorated. It's like the Tom Brady of rap.
I agree.
Someone who doesn't need to be doing this anymore.
The point man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the point man. He carries the flag for his camp, for hip hop,
right,
for social justice, and you know, to see, you kind of know that there's gonna be people following his footsteps, and that's very important to this thing we call hip hop culture. We had a strong year in hip hop in general, and I'm wondering how you think the back end is gonna play out, and if there's anything you're excited for, you see on the horizon, because it feels like we've definitely gotten it feels like we've been wiped out by the largest part of the wave, but could there
absolutely
be an even bigger wave in the second half of the year?
I hope so. I hope some of these artists that we mentioned come back with like official debut projects. There's, you know, Sci-Hi. I think he was a freshman in 2010. Obviously, Good Music Camp affiliated with Kanye. His debut album is coming out, and I feel like that, you know, I was hoping that could be an album of the year candidate, and I'm still hoping because Sci-Hi is probably one of the best, just, you know, just listening to his delivery, and I know it sounds kind of like half-baked when I say that, but he has one of the best just like technical abilities just to manipulate a beat and make his voice just, you know, sound good over it, and it's certainly interesting to see what he'll be able to do with his first official debut release. A Lil Yachty fan of a year and some change now. I feel like why I like Lil Yachty so much is because I didn't expect Lil Boat to be good. Probably like a lot of people.
That's like
was pleasantly surprised. And, you know, his follow-up projects haven't been that. Summer Songs 2 was okay. You know, it was kind of rushed. Then we're expecting Teenage Emotions to come out sometime next month. We'll see how he does with that. If he caters to his strong suits, more melodic songs in which he can, you know, showcase his voice on choruses and things like that, I think it'd be interesting. As you said, next month, as you said before, we have Logic and Machine Gun Kelly coming up.
Head to head,
yeah. And these are both people.
I like both.
And Machine Gun Kelly is someone who I also thought was like a fantastic mixtape artist. Like that was in like.
And he's calling this one Bloom, and it really feels like his second coming.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a lot of radio successes of late, And, you know, I think he's invigorated, and I think he's going to deliver.
Right, and just like Logic too, they're just like, they're good people at heart. Like, they're interesting.
A lot of heart.
I love the story. Like, I followed his story through like what he chronicles in his songs, and just like, you always love hearing a good come up success story. And I feel like MGK really fits into that, and especially with his not finding his footing in the rap career, kind of similar to Logic, not sure where he fits in. Here you have MGK representing Cleveland, like he's coming up on these tracks, and like, you know, he has some really good lyrics, and perhaps just not the best time to release it, because I feel like a lot of his fan base disintegrated just because he wasn't able to link up with some artists, and unfortunately some people just like stop listening to you if you stop producing over time. But it'll be interesting to see how he sort of recaptures the spotlight and what he chooses to do with it.
Definitely. Well, I think that's a good place to sign off, and I'll let you do the official sign off.
Well, thank you for watching.
You do the talking.
Okay. Thank you for watching the Organized Sound Podcast. I'm your co-host, Sean Grady. With Nahib all day. Have a good Easter Sunday.
Happy Easter, everybody.